Hey everybody, this is Joe. Thank you for watching my Giga Texas construction update video. Well, we're back to flying drones at Giga Texas today, and before I get into the main video, just want to remind you, if you want to see a different perspective of Giga Texas, I flew with my friend Geoff Gibbs for Memorial Day in his Cessna over Giga Texas, so make sure you check out my 27 May video. For shareholders who vote their shares ahead of the 13 June shareholders meeting, Tesla is now offering the chance to get a tour of Giga Texas, and your tour guides would be Elon Musk and Franz von Holzhammer. Now, this is a great opportunity. The link at the bottom of the screen is also in the video description if you want to learn more of how to register for this chance. And finally, an update for my plans for next week. Now, many of you know I also cover SpaceX and the Starship launches, and that's what I'm going to be doing next week. All indications are looking very promising for flight number 4 next week, and this will be my 4th Starship coverage. And the FAA has just announced that the flight number 3 did not create a public safety event. So even though the mishap report is still under the process with the FAA and SpaceX, this will not prevent them from flying flight number 4. Now, a final license has to be approved, expecting that to happen early next week, but this is a great indication. Now, continuing my work with Ellie in Space for the Starship launches, we will be planning to do live stream events, both a pre-launch and a launch live stream, possibly a post-launch as well. Now, this is going to be live streamed on her channels, both on X and on YouTube, so make sure you follow her and look for our coverage of the Starship Flight 4 next week. As for the weather for the 5th of June, it is looking outstanding. It's going to be a little warm, but not too bad in the morning, not too many clouds, and the winds are going to be great, at least at the ground level. So right now, things are looking very promising. I also want to mention, on my way down to Starbase, I will be stopping at the Tesla Corpus Christi lithium plant to try to get an updated video. The last time I was there was the 12th of March. And a lot has changed, so I'm looking forward to being able to document those changes and show you the current progress of the lithium plant. And finally, for those that want to continue to get Giga Texas coverage, I'd like to just let you know that Jeff Roberts, Brad Sloan, and Airwave Dynamics are all going to continue to cover Giga Texas and produce the videos on a daily basis. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with as well, because there is so much activity and so much progress that's going to happen over the next week. So make sure you check out their YouTube channels, follow them, and keep up to date with Giga Texas. That's it for all of the news, so let's get into the drone. Let's fly around Giga Texas at a slightly lower altitude and see what is going on today. If you would like to support my efforts, please consider using these links, which will be in the video description. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons on my YouTube video, as this helps as well. Thank you. My drones are ready and raring to go. Let's go flying over Giga Texas. Good morning, back at Giga Texas at a lower altitude than when I flew on Monday, and we're going to start here on the southwest corner. All of the glass has now been installed except for that area where it may be a entrance, and that's also where we have that kind of trapezoidal open foyer just on the inside. Now, there's a lot of equipment that's being installed inside as well, and we'll see that here shortly. On the left-hand side of the screen, we see many generators that have been set up to provide power temporarily until all of that is completed. Also, most of the glass is now finished on the south side, including about half of the parapet wall, which is all glass on the top as well. And more of those glass panels have been delivered on the ground. As we wrap around the southeast corner, a few things I do want to show you. One is, again, more of those white generators that we saw on the corner. Two, more of the pump trucks and some more cranes for the materials to be installed. On the left-hand side of the screen, we see more concrete has been poured, and closest to the windows is a separate level of the grade than the interior part. We also see the tanks in the upper left and how that is looking right now with the floor decking that has been installed around those tanks and some of the areas that already have had the concrete poured. And of course the cooling structural platform and the superstructure on the right-hand side that continues to be installed. And as I bring the drone up higher, this is a good view of that structure. All of the scaffolding that was used to build the concrete roof has been removed on the ground floor. The fiber reinforced plastic pipes for the superstructure has been installed on the northern part, and we see 3 of the cooling tower enclosures definitely taking shape. And then on top of the roof, we can see those delivered materials that are kind of concave that will form those kind of the cooling cones on the top of that structure. And a good view here looking at the overall cooling structure. Now I'm going to zoom in so you can get a good view inside the structure of the south end extension. It looks like there's a excavation that is underway on the middle of the site, and it's hard to tell exactly what that is, but very interesting. And in addition to that, we can see more of the work of installing some of the equipment on the inside as well. So a lot of progress going on the south end. Now this section with the new water detention pond and the reshaping of the pond that is already existing, plus the River Road extension, looks like it weathered the storms last night. We had some pretty strong thunderstorms that came through. Another thing that I did notice as we get closer to the multi-level parking garage is continued work on the ground for some trenching and some pipe work. Most of the ground slab concrete has been installed. We see some bollards that have been installed next to some of the staircases. And on this east side, we can tell that crews are busy putting concrete in on the last major section that requires concrete to finish up this structure. And a good view here from the southeast corner looking at the work and all of the concrete trucks lined up to help with that pump truck pour it inside. So once this is completed, then most of the structure will be finished. The cranes have now been dismantled. We've been watching for that for quite some time as they are no longer needed at this site, and they're getting ready to be taken off for another project. As I turn around, we can get a good view of the formwork and rebar on that ground floor on the east side. More work with the trenching for the underground steel corrugated pipes for the water management system, continuing to work its way towards the main factory. And just a good overall view of how the multi-level parking garage and the surrounding grounds are looking. Would not surprise me if pretty soon we start seeing some paving being done around this structure. Here's a good view of the east side of the body of white and also the stamping structure. And as we fly up over to the roof, we can see that they still haven't put very many more deducting on that opening on the right-hand side of the screen. We do see a lot of the work and materials plus tool chests on the left-hand side of the screens. And as I maneuver back towards this crane, we can also see those blue and white items. Those are used to hold up some of the ventilation ducts when they are installed on that open section. Plus we see all of this pipe work, and it continues to work its way all the way down to the south. This runs pretty much the length of the building now. Flying lower towards this southwest east corner, a good view of that cooling structural platform. On the left-hand side of the screen on the ground is more of those cooling tower segments that we see on the roof of that structure. And speaking of the roof, all of the roof decking has now been installed on the extension, and about half of it, maybe a little bit more, has had the final weatherproof membranes installed, and they're doing more of that installation on the southeast corner of the roof. It's pretty clear where the different kind of roof material has been installed here, and this is directly over where that supercomputer data cluster will be. And then they are continuing the regular white type of weatherproof membrane on this western corner. As we fly over towards the west side, I will bring the drone down, show you the resumed production of the Cybertrucks this early morning. This is again where they exit the factory. And there's this temporary holding lot just underneath the drone that did not have any Cybertrucks there this morning when I flew. But a good view of all of the Cybertrucks, about 10 of them, and they tend to come out in groups of 10, and then they are moved over to the west side outbound lot and east end of line facility for processing. As I zoom in, a couple of things that are noticed. They've been painting some of these columns and that first floor mezzanine white. The second floor is still in rebar, getting ready for concrete. We can see it's a lot of work, a lot of materials that have been installed or brought in for installation on the ground floor, this opening for the perimeter grade beam. And a lot of the work on the second floor and the second floor mezzanine, and that large open mezzanine section on the top of the screen is where that supercomputer cluster will be installed. I still don't see too much of the area where we would expect to see the boring tunnels coming through, but continuing to watch that area. With the closing in of all of the glass, it's getting harder and harder to be able to see inside. And of course, the position of the sun did not help this morning by the time I got here to fly. But I think we got a good view of what is going on the inside. And again, here is that southwest corner, all of the glass and that opening. So let's reposition the drone and let's take a look at what's going on the west side of the highway. We can see that there are still some of the tunnel concrete liners lined up here waiting for installation. However, most of the liners that have been already moved next to the actual tunnel site have already been used inside the tunnel. This is a good view of the clearing on the bottom right, and that silt fence that they have put in place, and of course the exposed portion of the tunnel. And as I zoom in, a good look at some of the work that is going on. We do see some dirt on the conveyor belt, so at least there has been some tunneling here very recently. And with the number of tunnel liners that have been installed, I think that the tunnel is definitely very close to the perimeter grade beam of the south extension, if not further. But on the right-hand side of the screen, you can tell that almost all of those tunnel liners have been removed and used for the tunnel, with the exception of some of the red marked ones, which we think are not to be used, but they're marked red for that reason. But it is interesting to see just how many of these tunnel liners are no longer in this area. Looks like they're getting some of the material for the grout replenished into the silos today, and that's what that truck is doing. Of course, the belt cassette with the number of belts installed. The spoils bin, looks like they're doing some washing and cleaning out of that with some water, and it looks like they are preparing more of the belt material near that section. As we look closer at the entrance of the tunnel, I'll zoom in a little bit to give you a good view of how this looks today. And there is a good amount of work that is going on inside that tunnel. And hopefully I'll be able to get some views showing where it enters into the building, if in fact that is the final disposition for the tunnel. But anyway, a lot of work going on here with the boring company today. as we fly over the West Warehouse on Wheels and this North-South Central Road. I'm going to show you a little of the activity on this triangular parking lot. More of the materials, steel corrugated pipes on the left have been installed, or at least put here temporarily. We see more on the right, and then the concrete vaults in the upper left. And of course the conduit for lighting, possibly for chargers, and we're still waiting for paving. No big work on that large clearing further to the west from here today. As we fly over this material staging yard, a good view of many of the materials that are being stored here. I'm going to bring the drone down here just to show you the ducts on the center of the screen that go onto that body in white open roof section. It looks like more of the bases and other equipment for ventilation systems have been delivered here recently. And as I continue to maneuver the drone and fly back towards the end-of-line facility over the TKS modular paint system trailer, you see another of these workshops for the pipe manufacturing and prefabrication before they go into the south end of the building. The outbound lot is filling up on the west side to some extent, but overall the number of vehicles, particularly as Cybertrucks, is less than we have seen, but that is a function of the movement of the vehicles off-site during the long weekend when production was essentially halted. But we also see on this north part where we've normally been able to count on a lot of Cybertrucks, almost all of them are gone. It looks like maybe they're reconfiguring this area, perhaps with some more tents. And I don't know if these are just going to be used for more of those Cybertrucks that we saw on the southwest corner of the factory, or if they have now caught up. But we'll see how the production and the transportation works. But a really good view of this north parking or temporary staging location. As we fly back towards the end-of-line facility, it's a good view of the test track along this west side, and also just how many of the open spaces for new vehicles here there are this morning. Next to all these tents, there's activity with the checkouts and logging in the vehicles. And of course, at the superchargers, only about a quarter of it is being used this morning, and it's a mix of Cybertrucks and Model Ys. Along the east side of the end of line is mostly being used for employee parking now. And we mentioned that this change had occurred sometime last week. As I continue to fly to the north, we can get a good view of the operations here where Cybertrucks are preparing to enter into the end-of-line facility. They're also getting the pressure washing to remove dirt and mud from the wheels and the sides of the vehicles before they go into the end-of-line, and a good overall view of the entire west side. So I'm going to continue to fly to the north on this side of the highway to give you a good view of some more of the storage locations. This one here with the two large tents and some of the trailers and materials. It's been here for quite some time, and it looks like it's continuing to being used for a lot of activity. The north-south road continues to get its medians and curbs, and it's looking more and more finished. And all of these Evapco cooling units and bases are being joined now with more tanks and some additional pipe work and other materials. So I'll try to keep an eye out for what is going on here and what the changes are, and if we can find where these are all being installed on the main site. I do believe this is going to be somewhere on the south end extension area. As I fly further to the north over the material staging with some of the steel items, it looks like they've actually moved more items in since the last time I flew over on this part of the site. Of course, you get a good view of Giga Texas in the upper left of the screen, and on the upper right, the west support facility. So a good overall view here of the west side of the highway. Trying to take advantage of the lighting right now to give you a good view of the Megapack site and also the work that's being done all throughout the center of the screen for that electrical conduit that is connecting the south end of the new electrical switch yard and the main factory. You can see some of the excavations for the concrete vaults on the left, more of the earthwork covering up all of the trenching where the conduit's been installed. You can see some of the concrete vaults on the right waiting for installation. On the bottom left is the conduits and that trenching, and then here is where it is getting ready for another concrete vault and where it crosses underneath Tesla Road. Just on the other side, a good view of the work that is continuing to extend the conduit through this area, through the parking area to the south where it will connect into the segment where the conduit has been installed on the northeast quarter of the casting machine structure. So while we're here, I'll give you a quick view of the 4680 battery cell portion of the factory and the work that is going on. Most of it is now inside out of view, and there's not a lot of materials that are being stored out here for movement inside. Now there is a big change on the north part here of the casting machine structure and that platform, and that is many of these Cybertruck castings. In fact, more are being delivered right now. What I think may have happened is during the weekend when production was down, the casting crews were at work making many more of these to get ahead of production. We can see that concrete has been poured next to the wall over the concrete vaults, and then now where the open section is for more of the conduit is underway. It's a good view of the number of castings and rack mounts for castings that are lined up here all along this side of the building, and it extends all the way down to the secondary main entrance. More work on the ground here. It looks like they're continuing to prepare it for a future slab. More materials, and on the left, the screw-type piers and more rebar. And in the center, we can get a good sense of the amount of rebar that's continuing to be installed here. More of the formwork. There's actually some openings in perimeter grade beam, which shows us where there will be an entrance and some of the plumbing. So a good overall view here of the work preparing for the baghouse filtration plant. As I bring the drone up, a couple of things I want to show you. Next to the parapet wall in the center of the screen, you can see all those pipes. Those are the ones that extend all the way the length of the building down to the south end where we saw them earlier. We also see just here a good view of the number of castings and rack mounts that have been placed, and also the work on the foundations along this side and some of the reconfiguration of the wall for the casting machine structure. As I continue to fly for the south, you can see a lot more of the castings. They're even using some of the dirt area in front of those new receiving doors for castings, and they continue all the way down past the east main entrance. So as I turn back to look up towards the north, we can get a good sense of just how many castings have been produced and where they are storing them right now, waiting for production to catch back up. Speaking of which, we can get a good view here of the old testing and calibration lot, where we see some Cybertrucks, but not nearly as many as we've seen before. Also, for those that have talked about the way they park, these are all parked very nicely. So if that was bugging you before, it looks like they've got those parked really well. Again, the cranes that have been disassembled, some of the gravel that has been brought in too, and they're using that for around the multi-level parking garage. As we fly up over the tree belt, we'll get a good view of the East Warehouse on Wheels in the center of the screen, the recycling yard here at the main part of the screen, and some of the concrete segments that have been put down to keep the mud at bay. And then this is one of the larger pipe fabrication workshop areas, and a good view of the number of pipes that they have been working on the right-hand side of the screen, at the bottom of the screen, and in between the workshops. So this work is definitely continuing at a pretty quick rate. As we fly up over a lot of these materials, I wanted to just give you a good view at this low altitude of what this section of the site looks like. Scaffolding is on the right-hand side of the screen, being prepared for further use. More materials on the left, some of the containers, workshops, and the trailers for the main contractors. I did notice that this clearing has then turned into a refueling depot. Those blue tanks and the catch basins around them have most likely got diesel fuel, and this is used to refuel many of the work vehicles and earth-moving machinery that is used around Giga Texas. And as we get closer to the extension for Tesla Road, it's just a good low-altitude view of the steel corrugated pipe and other materials, including what may be new guard shacks waiting here for installation. And then here is more of that pipe and the large trench with the vaults already installed. And again, this is the extension for Tesla Road, which will run through this area to the east. Good view of the battery cathode plant and die shop complex of structures, also the crash test facility on the right, and many of the trailers as well. As we continue to fly along this side of the site, we're over the water detention pond with the filtration system in the area where you see the water standing. And of course, not only the crash test facility north end here, but also that opening in the battery cathode plant where they continue to bring in white painted platforms and other items. It does look like one of the temporary doors got blown over, and that was probably because of the thunderstorms this morning. Here's some more of those white painted platform items that are being moved into that opening. And of course the wade pit. And then as I turn to the right, the cell testing and recycling lab with some of the containers and the trailers nearby this section as well. I'll fly up to the northeast briefly just to get a good quick look at this area, which is mostly being used for dirt, some of the old concrete, temporary staging until it's recycled, some materials, some equipment. We see these two large shiny steel, almost like tanks, still waiting for installation, and of course that white and red bridge crane as well. As we fly back over towards the north end of the battery cathode plant, as I maneuver the drone, there's a good view of all of these structures, including the main building, factory in the upper right, and the multi-level parking garage. And this earthwork area still is not seeing very much work or progress. It hasn't actually changed in the last several months, but eventually I expect this to be all paved with asphalt. On the north end of the die shop, a good look at some of the materials still waiting to be moved inside and that outside kiln or furnace. And then here we see cranes that are working near the vaporizers and tanks. They're delivering a few items, but they may be doing some additional either rework or maybe adding some components in between the vaporizers and the tanks. And I'll give you a good top-down view of what is going on here right now, and you can get a good sense of where those cranes are located and what they might be doing. Also a good view of the pumps and the manifolds on the roof section of the chiller plant and the manifolds in between all of the vaporizers and the tanks. So that will bring to a close the video for today. And I hope that you had a great long Memorial Day weekend, and things are now getting back up to speed here at Giga Texas with lots of progress all over the entire site. As always, thank you very much for your continued support and encouragement. I very much appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Take care.